The princess chose a human as her guardian. The galaxy was shaken. Tall, elegant columns carved with ancient symbols of the empire stretched toward the domed ceiling, giving the room an air of majesty and centuries-old tradition. Every corner echoed with whispers of past emperors and queens, their presence almost palpable to anyone who entered. Today, the hall was filled with nobles, ambassadors, and the empire's finest warriors. All had gathered to witness the most anticipated event of the year, the selection of Princess Celara's guardian. Princess Celara stood at the center of the hall, her posture perfect, her expression serene yet determined. She wore a ceremonial robe of deep violet, embroidered with silver threads that shimmered as she moved. The robe was a symbol of her status, her duty, and the weight of expectations resting on her shoulders. Despite the calm on her face, a spark of rebellion danced in her deep blue eyes. She had spent her entire life under the watchful eyes of advisors and tutors, trained to obey tradition without question. But today, she would make a choice that would challenge everything the Empire had ever known. For centuries, the Andromedan Empire had maintained a strict tradition. The royal guardian must be an elite alien warrior, chosen for their unmatched skill, discipline, and loyalty. These guardians were trained from birth, mastering combat techniques, strategic thinking, and diplomacy, ensuring the princess's safety and the empire's stability. The thought of choosing someone from outside their race was almost unthinkable, bordering on scandal. Yet Princess Celara had spent years observing humans, beings from a small blue planet called Earth. She had seen their courage, creativity, and adaptability, qualities she admired deeply. When the time came to make her choice, she knew she could not follow tradition blindly. The murmurs in the hall grew louder as the high priest stepped forward, holding the ceremonial scroll. "Princess Celara," he intoned, "it is time to select your guardian, speak your choice, and let the Empire bear witness." Celara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Every noble in the hall turned their gaze toward her, some with expectation, others with doubt. She lifted her chin and spoke clearly, her voice steady. "I choose Captain Elias Harper of Earth." The hall froze. A stunned silence followed, broken only by the faint rustle of robes and the nervous shifting of feet. Whispers erupted like wildfire. "Did she just say a human?" one noble whispered. "Impossible," another muttered. "A primitive species, how could she?" Elias Harper, standing at the back of the hall, felt every eye on him. He was an Earth Space Force officer, decorated for bravery and intelligence, but never had he imagined being called to serve as a guardian to an alien princess. His uniform, simple by Andromedan standards, seemed out of place among the elaborate ceremonial attire of the nobles. He swallowed hard, his pulse racing. This was not a battlefield he had trained for, but the responsibility was undeniable. He stepped forward, keeping his composure, his eyes meeting Celara's. "I accept," he said, his voice firm despite the rapid beating of his heart. The high priest's expression turned from shock to solemnity. "So be it," he said, carefully avoiding any sign of judgment. "The Empire shall witness this unprecedented choice." As the ceremony continued, Celara and Elias moved through the palace corridors, escorted by silent guards who still seemed unsure what to make of the human. Despite the grandeur surrounding them, a quiet tension hung in the air. Celara had expected resistance, but she had not anticipated the depth of skepticism that now surrounded Elias. "You realize what this means, don't you?" Celara said quietly as they walked. "The council will question every decision I make. The generals will resent you. Many will assume you are unfit before you even take a single step." Elias nodded, his gaze steady on the polished floor. "I understand, but I've faced impossible odds before. Humans are good at adapting. I will do whatever it takes to keep you safe and earn your trust." Celara smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and admiration. "I knew you were the right choice the moment I met you. There is something in your spirit that no Andromedan warrior has, something unpredictable but strong." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the Imperial Council. Tall, regal figures with sharp eyes and adorned in ceremonial armor approached, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright disapproval. Among them was General Kale, one of the Empire's most decorated war strategists. He stopped a few feet from Elias, studying him like a scientist examining an unknown specimen. "Princess Celara," General Kale said, his voice heavy with authority, "this human will serve as your guardian. Are you aware of the risks?" His species lacks our training, our discipline, our centuries of experience. Solara's eyes flared with determination. I am aware of the risks, and yet I trust him. Captain Harper possesses qualities you will never find in a warrior trained only in tradition, qualities that this empire desperately needs in these uncertain times. Kale's lips pressed into a thin line, but he said nothing further, though his eyes remained skeptical. The council continued their quiet discussions, but Solara held her ground. She knew this choice would shape not only her future, but the future of the empire itself. In the following days, Elias was introduced to the rigorous training and protocols of the Andromeden Guardians. The palace's training grounds were vast, with gravity-adjustable fields, holographic combat simulations, and advanced weaponry. Aliens who had trained for decades eyed him with a mixture of curiosity and doubt. Every movement Elias made was scrutinized, every decision questioned. Despite the skepticism, Elias proved to be different. Where the Andromedans relied on brute strength and centuries-old tactics, he applied human ingenuity and strategy. He observed patterns, adapted quickly, and found creative solutions that left even the most experienced warriors surprised. His style was unconventional, but it was effective. Solara watched with growing admiration. She realized that her choice was more than symbolic, it was practical. Humans, she thought, had something the Empire often overlooked: intuition, courage, and the ability to think beyond rigid tradition. Elias represented not just protection, but a chance for change, for growth, for a future where the Empire could evolve. However, resistance remained. The palace staff whispered behind closed doors, nobles questioned the princess's judgment, and some factions began plotting to remove Elias from his position. Even so, Solara refused to be swayed. She spent hours training alongside him, teaching him the subtleties of intergalactic politics, the nuances of diplomacy, and the expectations of a princess's protector. Their bond grew, built on trust, respect, and the recognition that each had strengths the other lacked. One evening, as the twin moons of the Andromeden capital rose high in the sky, casting silver light over the palace gardens, Elias and Solara stood by a fountain, watching the water shimmer. The night was quiet, filled only with the distant hum of starships in orbit. "Do you ever wonder if the Empire will ever accept me?" Elias asked quietly, his gaze fixed on the reflection of the moons. Solara smiled softly. "They may never fully accept you, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that you have my trust. And sometimes that is enough to start changing the minds of others." Elias nodded, feeling a sense of purpose he had never known. He had faced danger on countless battlefields, but protecting Solara was different. It required patience, understanding, and the courage to face not just physical threats but the weight of tradition and prejudice. Yet he was ready. For the first time in his life, he felt truly needed in a way that transcended duty or honor. Days turned into weeks, and Elias' presence began to have subtle effects on the Empire. Aliens who had doubted him began to notice his skill, his quick thinking, and his unwavering dedication. Solara's advisors, though still cautious, started to recognize the value he brought. Even General Kale, who had been openly critical, found himself reluctantly impressed by the human's insight during training exercises. One morning, during a simulation meant to test the Guardians' response to a potential invasion, Elias suggested a strategy no Andromedan had ever considered. Using misdirection, environmental manipulation, and a combination of small, human-inspired units, they successfully defended the palace against a simulated fleet far larger than their own. The result left the council stunned. "This human, he may actually be capable," one council member admitted, shaking his head. "I cannot deny the effectiveness of his methods." Solara, observing the council's reaction, felt a quiet sense of vindication. Her choice had been controversial, even daring, but she knew it was the right one. She had seen what humans could do when allowed to think beyond the constraints of tradition. As the sun set over the Andromeden capital, casting golden light over the towering spires and crystal windows, Solara and Elias stood together once more, overlooking the city. The murmurs of doubt still lingered, but a shift had begun. The Empire had been shaken, its beliefs challenged, and its future uncertain. Yet within that uncertainty lay possibility, a chance for change, for growth, and for a new era. Solara turned to Elias, her eyes filled with quiet determination. The galaxy may not understand our choice, Elias. They may try to stop us, undermine us, even doubt us. But we will face it together. You are more than my guardian. You are the spark that will show them what humans are truly capable of. Elias met her gaze, feeling a surge of determination he had never experienced before. Then we will show them, he said firmly. No matter what they think, no matter how powerful or entrenched tradition is, we will prove that courage, intelligence, and heart can change the galaxy. And so, the first chapter of an unprecedented partnership began, one that would challenge centuries of tradition, test the limits of loyalty and skill, and shake the very foundations of the Andromedan Empire. The princess had chosen a human, and the galaxy would never be the same. The days after the selection ceremony passed in a whirlwind of activity. The palace, always bustling with officials, guards, and servants, seemed even more alive with whispers about the human who had been chosen as Princess Celera's guardian. Some voices were curious, others skeptical, but all eyes now seemed to watch Elias Harper. The young human officer from Earth, far from his home planet, found himself at the center of a galaxy that expected him to fail. Training continued, more intense than ever. The Andromedan Guardians were elite for a reason. Their skills in combat, strategy, and diplomacy had been honed over decades. Elias had no illusions. He knew he had to prove himself not just to the princess, but to the Empire. The training grounds were enormous, a mix of natural terrain and artificial structures designed to test speed, agility, and strength. Holographic simulations of battles, some spanning multiple planets, challenged even the most experienced alien warriors. Elias approached each challenge with the same methodical mindset he had used on Earth. While the Andromedans relied on routines and centuries-old techniques, he analyzed patterns, sought weaknesses, and adapted on the fly. His human unpredictability unsettled many of the Guardians at first, but it soon became apparent that his unconventional methods were effective. One morning, during a sparring session with a veteran Guardian named Lyrex, Elias found himself outnumbered and cornered. Lyrex was tall, with green-scaled skin and eyes that glowed faintly, trained to anticipate every move. The session began predictably. Lyrex advanced with a series of attacks designed to overwhelm, confident that human reflexes could not match centuries of training. Elias dodged, weaving and rolling, using the environment to his advantage. A stray beam of sunlight glinted off the polished floor, momentarily blinding Lyrex, and Elias seized the opportunity. He executed a maneuver Lyrex had never seen, redirecting the veteran's momentum and pinning him lightly to the ground. The hall erupted in murmurs. Lyrex, though defeated, smiled and nodded in respect. "You are unpredictable," he admitted, brushing himself off. "There is skill in your chaos." Celera, observing from a nearby balcony, felt a surge of pride. "That's why I chose him," she whispered to herself. "Not because he follows rules, but because he creates new ones." Despite moments of success, Elias faced challenges beyond combat. The palace was a maze of politics, with nobles and advisors constantly monitoring him. Some treated him with open disdain, refusing to acknowledge his accomplishments. Others whispered doubts about the princess's judgment. The pressure was immense, but Elias remained focused. He understood that survival in this environment required more than physical skill. It demanded patience, intelligence, and the ability to earn trust. One afternoon, during a council meeting, a serious threat emerged. Scouts reported unusual activity near the outer border of the Empire, a fleet of unknown ships approaching at high speed. Panic rippled through the room. The Andromedan Empire had faced threats before, but these ships did not match any known enemy. Their technology was unfamiliar, their movements erratic. General Kale turned to Celera, his expression grim. "Your Highness, we must respond immediately. These could be pirates, raiders, or worse, an invading force. I suggest you let trained guardians handle this situation." Celera shook her head. "No," she said firmly. "Captain Harper is my guardian. He will act with us. We must trust him." The room fell silent. Few could believe she would allow a human to take part in a military decision at such a critical moment. Elias, sensing the weight of the situation, stepped forward. "I've studied fleet patterns and tactics from Earth and beyond," he said calmly. "If we act quickly and unpredictably, we can avoid a direct confrontation and force them into a position where they cannot succeed." Whispers filled the room. Even Kale looked skeptical, but there was no time for debate. Selara's decision was final. Elias led a team of Guardians to the observation deck, analyzing the approaching fleet through advanced sensors. The enemy ships moved in an unusual formation, appearing both aggressive and hesitant. Elias recognized the pattern, similar to the hit-and-run tactics humans sometimes used in space conflicts. He quickly devised a counter-strategy. Using smaller, agile craft, they would create diversions, forcing the fleet into traps while the main defense concentrated on critical points. The plan was risky. Failure could mean the destruction of the Empire's outer border stations, but hesitation would be worse. The team looked to Elias for guidance. For the first time, some of the doubting Guardians began to believe. The operation began at dawn. The sky over the border planets was filled with the streaks of ships moving at incredible speeds. Elias coordinated the movements with precision, calling out maneuvers in real time, anticipating the enemy's every move. Smaller vessels darted like swallows, drawing the invaders into carefully planned ambushes. Explosions lit the void, but carefully placed tactics minimized loss of life. Celara watched from the command bridge, her heart pounding. She had placed her faith in this human, and now she saw it tested under fire. Every decision Elias made seemed bold, sometimes reckless, yet each maneuver worked. The fleet, confused and outmaneuvered, faltered. Within hours, they retreated, leaving the Empire's border intact. The council, previously skeptical, erupted in applause, though some tried to mask their astonishment with polite nods. Even General Kale approached Elias, his expression unreadable. "You performed well," he said finally. "I had my doubts, but you have earned respect today." Elias nodded respectfully. "Thank you, sir. I'm here to protect the princess and serve the Empire. That is all that matters." Celara's eyes glistened with pride. She stepped forward, placing a hand on Elias' shoulder. "You have done more than protect me," she said softly. "You've shown them that courage and intelligence are not limited by species. You've proven that humans can stand among the greatest warriors in the galaxy." For the first time, Elias felt truly accepted, not just by Celara, but by the Empire. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. Challenges would continue, and many would still doubt him. But he had learned a valuable lesson. Trust, strategy, and determination could overcome even the most rigid traditions. In the following days, Elias continued to train, but his focus shifted. He studied Andromedan diplomacy, learning about alliances, treaties, and the delicate balance of power. Celara guided him, teaching him the subtleties of language, protocol, and negotiation. She admired his curiosity and determination. Unlike many of her previous guardians, Elias did not rely solely on physical strength. He asked questions, observed patterns, and offered solutions that surprised even the wisest diplomats. The bond between them deepened, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Celara trusted Elias with matters that went beyond protection, political strategy, intelligence gathering, and even personal counsel. Elias, in turn, learned to navigate a world far more complex than any battlefield he had faced on Earth. One evening, as the twin moons rose high over the capital, Elias found himself alone in the palace gardens, reflecting on the past weeks. The humans on Earth had trained him well, but nothing had prepared him for the cultural, political, and emotional challenges of this empire. Yet, he felt a strange sense of belonging. He was not just a guardian, he was part of something greater, a chance to change minds, challenge tradition, and protect a princess whose courage matched his own. Celara joined him, her presence quiet but comforting. "You've done well," she said. "The Empire is beginning to see what I saw in you. They may not admit it yet, but their perception is changing." Elias smiled faintly. "It wasn't easy. Many didn't believe I could do it." "You did more than prove them wrong," Celara replied. "You inspired them. And inspiration is more powerful than force." Their moment was interrupted by a sudden alert. Sensors had detected unusual activity near a remote sector of the Empire. Though the previous threat had been repelled, new dangers were always lurking. Elias felt a familiar rush of adrenaline. This was his world now, a galaxy filled with uncertainty, intrigue, and the possibility of greatness. Together, they prepared for the next challenge. Celara knew that choosing Elias had been more than an act of rebellion. It had been a strategic decision. Humans brought a perspective the Empire had never seen, a combination of courage, adaptability, and ingenuity. and Elias understood that his journey had only just begun. He was no longer an outsider. He was a guardian, a strategist, and a symbol of what humanity could achieve. As the sun set over the Andromedan capital, casting long shadows across the marble spires, the princess and her human guardian stood side by side. The empire had been shaken, doubt lingered, but hope was growing. Together, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, proving that trust, intelligence, and bravery could bridge the gap between species and change the destiny of the galaxy forever. Weeks passed after the first encounter with the unknown fleet, but peace was fleeting. The Andromedan Empire, vast and prosperous, was constantly under the threat of rival factions and distant warlords seeking to expand their influence. Even as the Council began to accept Elias Harper's presence, the universe had other plans. Intelligence reports indicated a massive fleet moving through uncharted space, far larger than any force the Empire had encountered in decades. Solara received the news during a council briefing. The room, usually filled with calm deliberation, erupted into murmurs and urgent discussions. The fleet's size was staggering, with hundreds of ships equipped with unknown weaponry. This was no ordinary raid. It was an organized strike, possibly aimed at destabilizing the Empire entirely. General Kale, who had begun to acknowledge Elias' abilities, turned to the princess. "Your Highness, this threat is unprecedented. Even the best-trained guardians and fleets may struggle to hold them back. We must deploy all forces strategically." Solara shook her head, her eyes firm. "We will not act as we always have. This is not the time to rely solely on tradition." "Captain Harper, what is your assessment?" Elias stepped forward, studying the projections displayed on the holographic table. The fleet moved in formations unlike anything the Empire had catalogued. Traditional tactics would likely fail. "Their movement suggests coordination but also rigidity," he explained. "They may be powerful but predictable. If we exploit that predictability and use unconventional maneuvers, we can neutralize their advantage. But it will require cooperation across species and forces." The room fell silent. Few had ever heard a human speak with such authority on interstellar warfare. Solara placed a reassuring hand on Elias' shoulder. "Prepare our forces," she said. "We follow his plan." In the following days, preparations for the defense began. Human-inspired strategies were introduced, combining speed, stealth, and deception. Smaller Andromedan ships were outfitted with advanced maneuvering thrusters, capable of sudden evasive movements. Units were trained to work in coordinated teams, executing rapid hit-and-run tactics that the traditionalists initially viewed with skepticism. Elias personally oversaw the training, demonstrating techniques that emphasized agility, observation, and the use of the environment. His human perspective brought fresh ideas to the Empire's military, challenging assumptions about how battles should be fought. Solara observed closely, proud of her decision to trust him. She realized that humans, though young in the galaxy's history, offered qualities that no elite warrior or centuries-old tradition could replicate. Finally, the day arrived. Scouts reported that the fleet had reached the outer sector of the Empire, closing in on several colonies. The Empire's fleet, now reorganized under Elias' strategy, moved to intercept. Solara stood on the command bridge, her hand resting lightly on the railing. Around her, generals and officers awaited orders, tension thick in the air. Elias' calm presence contrasted the anxious energy in the room. "We cannot confront them head-on," he explained. "They are too numerous and too strong. Instead, we will lure them into a position where their numbers become a disadvantage. Our smaller, faster units will create diversions, forcing them to split their forces. Meanwhile, our main fleet will target critical ships, disabling their command and coordination." The plan was daring, risky even, but the only alternative was total destruction. Solara nodded. "Then we follow your lead, Captain Harper. The fate of our people depends on it." As the fleets approached, the tension in space was palpable. Ships glimmered against the black void, their engines creating streaks of light like comets racing through the stars. The enemy fleet maintained its rigid formation, confident in its power. Elias' forces, smaller and seemingly vulnerable, moved unpredictably, weaving through asteroids and debris fields, forcing the enemy into confusion. Elias coordinated the battle with precision, calling out commands in real time. "Flank units move to grid 5, diversion units draw them in." His voice, calm and steady, carried authority. Guardians and pilots from multiple species executed the maneuvers flawlessly, adapting quickly to the unexpected changes in the enemy's strategy. The enemy fleet, confident in its strength, began to falter. The smaller, faster units darted in and out, striking critical points before disappearing into the shadows of asteroids and gas clouds. Explosions lit the void, but losses on Ilia's side remained minimal due to careful planning and constant adaptability. Solara watched the unfolding battle with a mix of awe and pride. She had seen the human officer train, study, and plan, but seeing him execute strategy on such a massive scale was extraordinary. His decisions were bold, sometimes unconventional, but they worked. The rigidity of the enemy fleet became their weakness, and Ilias exploited it masterfully. Hours passed as the battle raged. The enemy, unable to adapt to the unpredictable human strategies, began to retreat. Their formation broke apart, critical command ships were disabled, and their fleet, once imposing, was reduced to a scattered mass of retreating vessels. When the last of the enemy ships disengaged, silence filled the command bridge. The Empire's fleet had survived, their colonies protected, and the threat neutralized. The council members who had doubted Ilias now looked upon him with admiration. Even General Kale approached, his expression a mix of relief and respect. "You have done the impossible," Kale admitted. "Your strategies, they saved countless lives. I underestimated you, Captain Harper." Ilias nodded respectfully. "We all played our part, the humans and Andromedans together. This was never my fight alone." Solara smiled, a mixture of pride and gratitude shining in her eyes. "You have done more than protect me or the Empire. You have shown that courage, intelligence, and creativity can triumph over strength alone. You have changed how we see humans and perhaps how the galaxy will see them forever." The victory was celebrated across the Empire. Reports of the human guardian who had saved colonies and outsmarted a massive fleet spread quickly. Stories of Ilias' ingenuity and bravery inspired not only the citizens, but also other species within the Empire. He became a symbol of what humans could achieve when given trust and responsibility. Yet even in celebration, Ilia's new challenges were far from over. The universe was vast and unpredictable, filled with factions and forces eager to test the Empire's limits. He continued his training and planning, preparing for the next threat. Solara remained by his side, guiding, advising, and trusting him implicitly. Their partnership had grown beyond necessity. It had become a collaboration of equals, each learning from the other and strengthening the Empire through their unity. In the quiet moments after the battle, Solara and Ilias walked along the palace terraces, overlooking the city and the distant stars. The twin moons cast a gentle glow, illuminating the palace spires and gardens. The scent of night-blooming flowers filled the air, and for a moment the galaxy's turmoil felt distant. "You were incredible today," Solara said softly, breaking the silence. "I've never seen a guardian move like that, not even among the most skilled Andromedans." Ilias smiled faintly. "It's all about observation and adaptation. I learned that on Earth. Predictability is a weakness, flexibility is strength." Solara laughed lightly, a sound that seemed to ease the weight of recent events. "I always knew there was something extraordinary about humans, but seeing it in action, it's more than I imagined. You've changed my perspective, Ilias, not just about humans, but about what is possible when we challenge tradition." He looked at her, feeling a sense of purpose deeper than any mission he had ever undertaken. "Then we keep challenging it, Princess, together, for the Empire, for its people, and for the future we want to build." As they stood together, the stars stretching endlessly above, a quiet determination settled between them. The Empire had faced its greatest threat yet and emerged victorious, but Ilias knew this was only one of many challenges to come. His role as guardian had evolved. He was no longer just a protector, but a strategist, a symbol, and a bridge between worlds. Across the galaxy, word of the human guardian spread. Some were inspired, others skeptical, but all recognized that the Andromedan Empire had changed. The era of rigid tradition was giving way to a new age, one where intelligence, courage, and ingenuity mattered as much as lineage or species. And at the center of this change stood Princess Solara and her human guardian, prepared to face whatever trials the universe would send their way. Ilias and Solara spent the following weeks strengthening alliances, ensuring colonies were reinforced, and preparing for possible retaliation from other factions. The victory had been significant, but it had also drawn attention. Rival empires and warlords now knew that the Andromedans were not only strong, but innovative, guided by a princess willing to trust beyond tradition and a human guardian capable of extraordinary strategy. Despite the looming threats, Solara and Elias found moments of quiet reflection. They trained, planned, and learned together, building a relationship of trust and mutual respect. Solara admired Elias' calm decisiveness under pressure, while Elias valued her insight, intuition, and unwavering courage. Together, they became more than guardian and princess. They became partners in shaping the Empire's future. As the twin moons set and the first light of dawn touched the palace spires, Elias gazed at the horizon. He had come from a small, distant planet, unprepared for the enormity of the Andromedan Empire. Yet now he was at its heart, facing challenges beyond imagination and proving that humans could rise to any occasion. The galaxy had been shaken by his presence, and he knew that even greater trials awaited. But with Solara by his side, he felt ready for whatever the universe could throw at them. And so, with the Empire watching, rivals wary, and the stars stretching endlessly before them, Princess Solara and Captain Elias Harper prepared to face the future. Their bond, forged in trust, strategy, and courage, had already begun to change the galaxy. The stage was set for the next chapter, where innovation, bravery, and human spirit would continue to challenge tradition and reshape the destiny of countless worlds. The Empire had changed. Word of Captain Elias Harper's ingenuity and bravery had spread across star systems, reaching distant planets and influencing factions that once looked down on humans. The victory against the unknown fleet had shown that strength alone was not enough. Intelligence, adaptability, and courage mattered just as much. Yet, with recognition came new challenges. Rival powers watched the Andromedan Empire with increased attention, some suspicious, others jealous. Princess Solara understood that leadership required more than diplomacy or ceremonial appearances. She and Elias had proven themselves in battle, but now they faced a different kind of test, uniting a galaxy fragmented by fear, tradition, and prejudice. She called a council meeting, gathering representatives from allied species, prominent generals, and key diplomats. The room was filled with tension. Many had doubts about the human guardian whose reputation now eclipsed centuries of tradition. Elias stood beside her, calm and observant. Unlike previous meetings, where he often stayed in the background, today he spoke freely. "We cannot rely solely on fear or strength to maintain peace," he said. "We must build alliances based on trust and shared purpose. The galaxy is too large, too complex, for any one empire to control through force alone. Cooperation, innovation, and respect for different species will be our greatest strength." The room was quiet. Some council members nodded thoughtfully, while others exchanged wary glances. Even General Kale, who had once doubted Elias, listened intently. He could not ignore the results of the humans' previous strategies and the respect he had earned from both allies and enemies alike. Solara added her voice, firm and unwavering. "Captain Harper's strategies have already saved countless lives and strengthened our empire. We must take bold steps to ensure that the galaxy recognizes the Andromedan Empire not just as a power, but as a force for stability and progress." The council deliberated for hours, eventually agreeing to a series of diplomatic missions and cooperative defense plans. Elias would lead many of these efforts, guiding fleets, mediating disputes, and using his unique perspective to navigate interspecies politics. It was a role that challenged everything he had known about leadership, strategy, and negotiation. As preparations began, Solara and Elias also focused on the training of new guardians. Recognizing the potential of humans and other species to bring fresh perspectives, they encouraged recruits to think creatively, adapt quickly, and challenge traditional methods. The palace's training grounds were transformed into a hub of innovation, with simulations and exercises designed to test intelligence, cooperation, and strategic thinking rather than brute strength alone. One evening, while observing a training session, Solara approached Elias. "Do you ever miss Earth?" she asked, her tone soft. Elias paused, watching a group of young cadets coordinate a complex simulation. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but this is where I'm needed now." I never imagined I would find purpose on a distant planet, protecting a princess and helping shape a galaxy. Earth feels far away, but my place is here. Solara nodded, her gaze thoughtful. I always believed humans had potential beyond what we understood. You've proven it. And not just for yourself. You've shown others that courage and intelligence can cross the boundaries of species and tradition. The moment was interrupted by an urgent alert. Scouts reported unusual activity near a distant trade route, where a coalition of warlords had begun raiding colonies and disrupting commerce. The threat was smaller than the previous fleet, but significant enough to demand immediate attention. Elias quickly analyzed the situation, devising a plan that minimized risk while ensuring the protection of civilians and colonies. As the fleets moved out, Elias coordinated maneuvers with precision. Small strike teams intercepted raiders, while diplomatic envoys negotiated with neutral factions to prevent further escalation. Solara observed the operation from the command bridge, impressed by the calm efficiency and strategic foresight Elias displayed. The enemy was routed with minimal casualties, and colonies were secured. The success further solidified Elias' reputation. Across the Empire, stories of his leadership and ingenuity inspired citizens and military personnel alike. Humans, once underestimated, were now recognized as capable and valuable allies. Solara's choice had been validated, and the Empire had begun to embrace a new era of collaboration and respect for diverse abilities. However, not all factions welcomed this change. A coalition of conservative nobles, still clinging to centuries-old traditions, conspired to challenge Solara's authority. They viewed Elias as a threat to their power and sought to discredit him, arguing that a human could never fully understand or uphold the Empire's values. Solara was not naive to these dangers. She convened a private meeting with Elias, discussing the growing political tension. "They will not stop trying to undermine us," she said. "They fear change and they fear what you represent. But we cannot allow fear to dictate our actions." Elias nodded, determination in his eyes. "Then we face them together. I will continue to prove that humans can be more than their reputation, and you will continue to lead with courage and vision. Together we can show them a better path." Their partnership grew stronger, built on trust, respect, and shared goals. While the Empire faced external threats, their internal bond allowed them to navigate complex political landscapes with confidence. They met with allied species, forged trade agreements, and mediated disputes, demonstrating the value of collaboration and mutual respect. One significant challenge arose when a powerful neighboring empire threatened a critical supply line. The Andromedan Council debated sending a large fleet to confront the threat, but Elias proposed a different approach. Using intelligence gathering, stealth maneuvers, and targeted strikes, he devised a plan to neutralize the threat without provoking full-scale war. The operation was executed flawlessly. Enemy forces were contained, supply lines were restored, and the neighboring empire was forced to negotiate peace. The success further reinforced the message that innovation, intelligence, and adaptability could achieve results that brute force could not. As months passed, the empire flourished under Solara's leadership and Elias' guidance. The partnership between the princess and her human guardian became a model for cooperation, demonstrating that trust, courage, and creativity could transcend species and tradition. The Andromedan Empire had not only survived but thrived, evolving into a more resilient and adaptive civilization. In quieter moments, Solara and Elias reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. They walked through the palace gardens, where the soft glow of twin moons illuminated pathways lined with exotic flowers. The air was filled with the hum of distant starships and the gentle rustle of leaves. "You've done more than I imagined," Solara said. "Not just as my guardian, but as a symbol of what the galaxy can achieve when it embraces new ideas and trust." Elias smiled, gazing at the stars above. "And you've done more than I imagined too, Princess. You trusted me when no one else would. You challenged tradition and gave me the chance to prove that humans can rise to any occasion. Together, we've changed the Empire, and maybe even the galaxy." Solara nodded, her eyes shining with quiet determination. "This is only the beginning. The galaxy will continue to test us, but we have shown what is possible when courage, intelligence, and trust guide our actions, and we will face whatever comes next together." Their bond, forged through trials, battles, and shared victories, had become unbreakable. They were no longer simply guardian and princess. They were partners in shaping the future, symbols of a new era where cooperation and innovation mattered more than lineage or tradition. As dawn broke over the capital, painting the palace spires with shades of gold and silver, the empire's citizens looked to the skies with renewed hope. Stories of the human guardian who had helped protect their worlds spread across planets, inspiring a new generation to think beyond fear, to embrace courage, and to value intelligence and creativity. Solara and Elias continued to work tirelessly, guiding the empire through political challenges, external threats, and the evolving needs of their citizens. Together, they implemented reforms that encouraged education, interspecies collaboration, and innovative thinking, laying the foundations for a more resilient and harmonious empire. Across the galaxy, allies and rivals alike began to take notice. The Andromedan Empire was no longer just a dominant power. It had become a symbol of what could be achieved when trust, courage, and ingenuity were valued above rigid tradition. Humans, once underestimated, were now recognized as capable partners, their potential no longer dismissed. Through victories and challenges, Solara and Elias demonstrated that leadership required more than authority or strength. It demanded vision, adaptability, and the willingness to trust and empower others. Together, they had reshaped the empire, challenged long-held prejudices, and set a precedent that would influence generations to come. As the sun rose higher, casting light over the city and beyond, Solara and Elias stood atop the palace terraces, looking out at a galaxy filled with possibilities. The empire had been tested, traditions had been challenged, and the galaxy had been shaken. But in the heart of it all, two unlikely partners had proven that courage, intelligence, and trust could change the course of history. The future remained uncertain, as it always would. Threats would arise, challenges would test their resolve, and the galaxy would continue to evolve in unpredictable ways. Yet Solara and Elias faced the unknown with confidence, knowing that together, they could meet any challenge, inspire any ally, and overcome any obstacle. The Andromedan Empire had entered a new era, one where humans could rise to greatness, where innovation and courage were celebrated, and where the bonds between species could shape a future stronger than any tradition alone. And at the center of this era stood Princess Solara and her human guardian, ready to face the galaxy, and whatever it held, with unwavering determination. The princess chose a human as her guardian. The galaxy was shaken,